The most dangerous lies are not the ones people tell you. They are the ones you tell yourself. I stood at the front of St. Matthew's Church holding a bouquet of white roses so tightly that a few petals had already fallen onto the polished floor beneath my feet. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, scattering colors across the pews packed with smiling guests. Everything looked exactly the way a wedding should look. Beautiful. Perfect. Certain. Yet beneath my carefully arranged smile, something felt wrong. Not wrong enough to stop the ceremony. Just wrong enough to make my heartbeat feel slightly out of rhythm. My father sat proudly in the front row. My mother dabbed tears from her eyes. Friends smiled. Cameras flashed. Across from me stood Ethan Caldwell, the man I was supposed to marry. He looked handsome in his tailored navy suit. Successful. Respectable. The kind of man everyone expected a woman to choose. The kind of man I had spent 2 years convincing myself was the right future. The pastor smiled warmly as he opened the ceremony. His voice echoed softly through the church. I tried to focus on his words. Instead, I found myself staring at the wedding band waiting on a velvet cushion nearby. A simple circle of gold. A promise. A decision that would shape the rest of my life. Ethan reached for my hand. His grip felt steady. Familiar. Yet for reasons I could not explain, I felt an unexpected chill move through me. Then the church doors opened. The sound was not loud. It did not need to be. Every head turned at once. A man stood at the entrance. Tall. Calm. Dressed in a charcoal suit that seemed almost black beneath the afternoon light. He did not rush forward. He did not shout. He did not create a scene. He simply stood there, as though he belonged exactly where he was. A wave of whispers spread through the guests. I recognized him immediately. Everyone did. Lucas Moretti. His reputation had traveled through Boston for years. Powerful businessman. Influential investor. A man whose name always seemed to appear whenever important decisions were being made. My stomach tightened. Ethan's hand immediately became rigid around mine. That was the first thing I noticed. Not Lucas. Ethan. The pastor cleared his throat awkwardly. Several guests exchanged nervous glances. Yet Lucas remained completely composed. His blue eyes never left mine. Slowly, he walked down the center aisle. Every footstep echoed through the church. Nobody stopped him. Nobody spoke. When he finally reached the front, he looked directly at me. Not Ethan. Not the pastor. Me. For several seconds, the silence felt endless. Then Lucas spoke. His voice was calm enough to make the entire room lean forward. I am not here to stop your wedding, Emily. Confusion swept through me. Then why was he here? Lucas held my gaze. There was no arrogance in his expression. No anger. Only certainty. I only came to ask you one question. My pulse began hammering inside my chest. Around us, the church seemed to disappear. The guests. The flowers. The music. Everything faded. Lucas took one final step forward. Then he asked the question that instantly made my future feel uncertain. If you knew the truth about the man standing beside you, would you still say yes today? For several seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The question hung in the air like a crack spreading across glass. I stared at Lucas Moretti, searching his face for some sign that this was a misunderstanding. A joke. A mistake. I found none. His expression remained calm. Certain. As though he already knew the answer and was simply waiting for me to discover it myself. Beside me, Ethan released my hand. The movement was subtle, but I felt it immediately. When I turned toward him, his jaw was tight. His smile had vanished. This is ridiculous, Ethan said. His voice sounded sharper than I had ever heard before. You need to leave. Lucas never looked at him. His attention remained fixed on me. I am not asking him, he said quietly. I am asking her. Murmurs rippled through the church. The pastor shifted uncomfortably. My mother looked confused. My father appeared concerned. The beautiful ceremony we had spent months planning was unraveling one uncomfortable second at a time. I should have been angry. I should have demanded that Lucas leave. Instead, I found myself thinking about the question. If you knew the truth. The words echoed inside my mind. Because the truth was, for months now, tiny doubts had followed me everywhere. Small moments I had dismissed. Little things that never quite made sense. Ethan suddenly stepped forward. Emily, do not listen to this. I looked at him. Really looked at him. For the first time that day, I noticed something unexpected in his eyes. Not confidence. Not concern. Fear. It disappeared almost instantly, but I had seen it. My stomach tightened. Lucas reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and removed a sealed envelope. He did not hand it to me. He simply held it. You deserve information before making a permanent decision. Ethan's face lost color. Do not do this. The reaction startled me more than anything Lucas had said. Ethan had always been composed. Controlled. Nothing ever rattled him. Yet now his voice carried an edge I had never heard before. Lucas glanced briefly toward the envelope. I am not here to embarrass anyone. Then he looked back at me. If I am wrong, throw this away and continue your wedding. The church fell silent again. My heartbeat thundered inside my chest. Every instinct told me to reject the envelope. To protect the life I had spent 2 years building. Yet another part of me could not ignore what I was seeing. Ethan was afraid. Deeply afraid. And suddenly memories began surfacing. Business trips he never fully explained. Phone calls he always took in private. Financial discussions that stopped whenever I entered a room. The uneasy feeling I experienced whenever I asked certain questions. One memory hit harder than the others. 3 months earlier, I had asked Ethan about a company listed in several documents I accidentally found in his office. He had smiled and changed the subject so smoothly that I barely noticed. Until now. Lucas took a single step forward and placed the envelope on the front pew. Not in my hand. Not forcing a choice. Leaving it entirely to me. Then he spoke words that made my pulse quicken even more. I will leave right now if you want me to. His voice remained steady. But before you say yes to a lifetime, ask yourself one question. The church seemed to shrink around me. Every eye watched. Every heart waited. Lucas nodded toward Ethan. Then he asked quietly, why is an innocent man more afraid of the truth than I am? The silence that followed felt unbearable. I looked at the envelope resting on the front pew as though it might explode if I touched it. Around me, the church remained frozen. Guests exchanged uneasy glances. My mother gripped my father's arm. The pastor stood motionless beside the altar. Nobody seemed to know what should happen next. Including me. Ethan took a step closer. Emily, this is exactly what he wants. His voice sounded calm again, but the calm felt forced. Rehearsed. He is trying to manipulate you. I wanted to believe him. I really did. For 2 years I had trusted Ethan. I had planned a future with him. I had imagined children, holidays, anniversaries, ordinary moments stretching decades into the future. Yet every time I looked at the envelope, another question surfaced. If there was nothing to hide, why was he so desperate for me not to see it? My gaze shifted toward Lucas. He remained completely still. No pressure. No arguments. No dramatic speeches. Just patience. The kind of patience that comes from believing the truth can survive on its own. My heart pounded harder. Then I did the one thing nobody expected. I walked past both men and picked up the envelope. Gasps spread quietly through the church. Ethan immediately moved forward. Emily. I looked at him. If it proves nothing, then there's no reason for me not to read it. He opened his mouth to respond. No words came out. That silence frightened me more than any answer could have. My fingers trembled as I broke the seal. Inside were several documents, and a small flash drive attached to a folded note. The note contained only one sentence. Read this before you marry him. I unfolded the first page. At first, the information meant nothing. Corporate records. Business filings. Financial statements. Then I saw a company name. My stomach dropped. I knew that company. It was the same company I had accidentally discovered months earlier in Ethan's office. The same company he insisted was unimportant. Yet according to the documents in my hands, it controlled assets worth millions of dollars. Hidden assets? Assets never disclosed to investors. Never disclosed publicly. I turned another page. My pulse quickened. Another company appeared. Then another. Every name connected back to Ethan through signatures, ownership structures, and records that looked disturbingly official. Where did you get this? I whispered. Lucas answered quietly. From people who believed you deserved the truth. Ethan laughed suddenly. The sound startled everyone. This proves nothing. His smile appeared forced. Anyone can create paperwork. I wanted to agree. I wanted to throw everything away and continue the ceremony. Then a memory surfaced. 2 weeks earlier, Ethan received a phone call while we were having dinner. The moment he heard the caller's name, he left the table and stepped outside. When he returned, he looked pale. Distracted. He claimed it was a business issue. Looking at the documents now, I realized the caller's name appeared repeatedly throughout the records. My hands grew cold. One coincidence could be ignored. 2 could be explained. But not this many. Not all at once. The church no longer felt like a wedding venue. It felt like the place where my carefully constructed future was beginning to crack apart. Then I noticed something attached to the final page. A photograph. The moment I recognized the people standing beside Ethan in the image, every remaining doubt inside me began to disappear. My eyes locked onto the photograph. For a moment, I forgot about the church. The guests. The ceremony. Everything disappeared except the image in my hands. Ethan stood beside 3 men at a private event held less than 6 months earlier. That alone meant nothing. What mattered were the faces standing next to him. I knew them. Everyone in Boston knew them. Their names had appeared repeatedly in financial investigations, corporate scandals, and public hearings over the past several years. Ethan once told me he had never met any of them. Not once. I remembered the conversation clearly because he laughed when I asked. He called them dishonest businessmen and said he wanted nothing to do with people like that. Yet here he was. Smiling beside them. Comfortable beside them. Familiar beside them. My throat tightened. Slowly I looked up. Ethan saw the photograph. The confidence drained from his face. Emily, he said carefully, there is an explanation. The words sounded painfully familiar. There was always an explanation. Always another reason. Another excuse. Another story. I looked back at the image. Then at the documents. Then at Ethan. For the first time in 2 years, I wondered how much of our relationship had been built on information he carefully chose to give me. The realization hurt more than I expected. Around us, the church remained silent. Nobody wanted to interrupt. Nobody wanted to become part of whatever was happening. Lucas stood several feet away, saying nothing. He looked almost uncomfortable being there. That surprised me. If his goal had been humiliation, he would have been enjoying this moment. Instead, he appeared focused on only one thing. Making sure I saw the truth before making a permanent decision. Ethan stepped closer. These people attend hundreds of events. A photograph proves nothing. I wanted to believe him. Then another memory surfaced. Last year, Ethan canceled our anniversary dinner at the last minute because of an emergency business meeting. He claimed investors had flown in unexpectedly. 2 days later, I found a receipt in his jacket pocket from the same hotel where this photograph had been taken. At the time, I ignored it. Now it felt different. Everything felt different. The small inconsistencies I spent years dismissing suddenly began connecting together. My heartbeat pounded inside my ears. "Did you lie to me?" I asked quietly. Ethan hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. The hesitation answered more than words ever could. Tears threatened to form, but I refused to let them fall. Not yet. Not here. My father slowly stood from the front pew. Concern filled his face. My mother looked heartbroken. They had trusted Ethan too. We all had. The church suddenly felt too warm. Too crowded. Too small. I lowered the photograph and took a slow breath. Then I noticed something else inside the envelope. A folded page I had not yet read. The paper looked newer than the rest. Across the top was a date from only 3 weeks earlier. My pulse quickened again. Whatever was written there was recent. Important. Carefully placed at the very end. Slowly, I unfolded the page. The moment my eyes reached the first paragraph, I realized the photograph was not the real reason Lucas had walked into my wedding. It was only the beginning. My hands trembled as I read the first paragraph. The words blurred for a second before my eyes finally focused. It was not a financial report. Not a corporate document. Not another photograph. It was a private memorandum written by an investigative consulting firm hired 3 weeks earlier. The report summarized months of research. My heartbeat accelerated with every line. According to the document, Ethan had been negotiating a merger involving several hidden companies connected to the records already sitting in my hands. That alone was not the shocking part. The shocking part was a single sentence buried in the middle of the page. The proposed marriage would significantly strengthen public trust and improve long-term reputational positioning. I read the sentence twice. Then a third time. My stomach dropped. Marriage. Public trust. Reputational positioning. The words felt cold. Calculated. Businesslike. As if my future had been reduced to a strategic asset inside a corporate presentation. Around me, the church remained silent. I could feel hundreds of eyes watching. Waiting. Yet I no longer noticed them. My attention remained trapped on the paper. There was more. Much more. The report described public image concerns surrounding several business relationships Ethan had concealed. It recommended accelerating the wedding timeline to strengthen his personal brand before additional information reached investors. My chest tightened. Investors. Brand. Image. Not once did the document mention love. Not once did it mention commitment. Not once did it mention me as a person. Only as a solution. A strategy. A benefit. Slowly, I lowered the paper and looked toward Ethan. His expression told me everything. Not because he confessed. Not because he explained. Because he looked defeated. The confidence he carried for 2 years had vanished. "Emily," he said quietly, "it is not what you think." The words hurt more than anger ever could. I remembered every promise. Every conversation about our future. Every time he told me I was the most important person in his life. Now those memories felt different. Fragile. Uncertain. I searched his face desperately, hoping to find something that would prove the report wrong. Instead, I found guilt. My father slowly sat back down in the front pew. My mother wiped tears from her eyes. The sight broke my heart. They had welcomed Ethan into our family. They had trusted him. Just as I had. Then something unexpected happened. Lucas finally spoke. His voice remained calm. "I did not bring this to destroy your wedding." Everyone turned toward him. Including me. He met my gaze. "I brought it because nobody should make a lifetime decision without knowing the truth." There was no triumph in his expression. No satisfaction. Only sincerity. For the first time since he entered the church, I noticed how uncomfortable he looked standing there. As though this was the last place he wanted to be. The realization unsettled me. Because everything I believed about Lucas Moretti suddenly seemed incomplete. Ethan took a step toward me. "Please." His voice cracked slightly. "We can talk about this privately." I wanted privacy. I wanted certainty. I wanted my old life back. But deep inside, I already knew something irreversible had happened. The future I planned no longer existed. Then my eyes landed on the flash drive still resting inside the envelope. Until that moment, I had almost forgotten it was there. A small piece of plastic. Silent. Ordinary. Yet according to the label attached to it, it contained recordings made only 48 hours earlier. And based on the look that instantly appeared on Ethan's face when he noticed me holding it, whatever was stored on that drive frightened him far more than any document ever could. The flash drive suddenly felt heavier than everything else in my hands. Ethan stared at it as though it carried the power to destroy years of careful planning. For the first time since I met him, he looked completely uncertain. The sight unsettled me more than I expected. This was a man who always had an answer. Always had a plan. Always knew exactly what to say. Yet now, standing at the altar where we were supposed to begin our future together, he seemed unable to find a single convincing word. "Emily," he said quietly, "whatever is on that drive does not tell the whole story." I looked at him. "Then tell me the whole story." His mouth opened. Then closed. Another silence. Another answer hidden behind hesitation. Around us, the church remained frozen in place. Guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The flowers still decorated the aisle. The candles still flickered softly beside the altar. Everything looked like a wedding. Nothing felt like one. My eyes moved toward Lucas. He stood exactly where he had been standing before. Calm. Patient. He had not interrupted. He had not pressured me. He had simply placed the truth in front of me and allowed me to decide what to do with it. That realization kept growing inside my mind. If his goal had been control, he would have demanded an immediate answer. Instead, he kept giving me space. Ethan stepped closer. "Please. Let us leave. We can discuss this privately." I shook my head. "No." The word surprised even me. My voice sounded stronger than I felt. "You have asked me to trust you for 2 years. I am asking you for honesty for 2 minutes." His eyes dropped toward the floor. My heart sank. Deep down, I already knew what that meant. Then my father slowly approached the altar. He looked older than he had that morning. Tired. Concerned. "Emily," he said gently, "you do not have to make any decision today." His words broke something inside me. Because he was right. For months, I had been rushing toward this wedding. Choosing invitations. Choosing flowers. Choosing a future. Yet nobody had ever told me I could stop. Nobody had ever reminded me that a delayed decision was better than a permanent mistake. Tears finally filled my eyes. Not because the wedding was falling apart. Because I realized how close I had come to ignoring my own doubts. I looked down at the engagement ring sparkling beneath the church lights. Just hours earlier, it represented certainty. Now it felt like a question I could no longer answer. Slowly, I removed the ring from my finger. A quiet gasp moved through the church. Ethan stared at the ring in my hand. His face turned pale. "Emily." I shook my head. "I cannot marry someone I no longer trust." The words hurt. More than I expected. More than anyone could see. The dream I had spent years building was ending in front of hundreds of people. Yet beneath the heartbreak, something unexpected appeared. Relief. Small. Fragile. But real. For the first time all day, I could breathe. I placed the ring on the altar and stepped back. The ceremony was over. The future I planned was gone. And as I stood there surrounded by silence, I realized I had absolutely no idea what would happen next. Then Lucas quietly spoke 5 words that changed everything again. "You deserve to know why." The words settled over the church like a second silence. "You deserve to know why." I stared at Lucas, exhausted from everything that had happened and yet unable to look away. My wedding was over. The future I thought I understood had disappeared. And somehow the man standing in front of me seemed to know there was still a piece of the story missing. I wiped a tear from my cheek and took a slow breath. Then tell me. My voice sounded small inside the enormous church. Lucas glanced briefly toward the guests. Many had already begun leaving quietly, sensing that what remained was no longer a ceremony but a private reckoning. My parents stayed. The pastor stayed. Ethan remained frozen near the altar. Lucas looked back at me. 7 months ago, someone approached me. The statement caught me off guard. Who? He hesitated. A former employee of one of Ethan's companies. Ethan immediately looked away. Lucas continued. He was worried. He believed decisions were being made that would eventually hurt innocent people. He brought information to several people. Most ignored him. I did not. The church felt smaller with every sentence. Lucas was not speaking like a rival. He was speaking like someone explaining a responsibility he never wanted. At first, I thought it was simply business. He said. Then your name appeared. My heartbeat quickened. My name? He nodded. Repeatedly. Confusion washed through me. Lucas reached into his jacket and removed a folded piece of paper. Unlike the documents before, this one looked worn from being handled many times. You were never the target of anything illegal, he said carefully. But your relationship became part of a strategy. Your reputation. Your family's reputation. Your trust. The words hurt because they matched exactly what I had already begun to fear. Lucas handed me the paper. I unfolded it slowly. At the top was a planning document from months earlier. Most of the page contained ordinary corporate language. Then I saw a section highlighted near the bottom. Public confidence opportunities. Family-centered image development. Marriage announcement timing. My chest tightened. It was all there. Not love. Not commitment. Not a future. A strategy. A timeline. A public relations advantage. I closed my eyes briefly. When I opened them again, Ethan was staring at the floor. He did not deny it. He did not argue. That silence answered every remaining question. Yet what surprised me most was not the document. It was Lucas. Why did you care? I asked quietly. You could have ignored all of this. For the first time since entering the church, something softened in his expression. Because I watched someone make a decision without the truth once before. His voice grew quieter. And I promised myself I would never stay silent again. I studied his face. There was pain there. Old pain. The kind that does not disappear with time. Suddenly, I realized this was never about winning. It was never about Ethan. It was never even about me. It was about a promise Lucas had been carrying long before he walked into this church. Then he said something that made my breath catch. The real reason I came today is because someone asked me to protect you if this day ever arrived. My pulse stopped for a moment. Who? Lucas held my gaze. Then he spoke a name I never expected to hear. The name hit me harder than every document, every photograph, and every unanswered question combined. Michael Carter. My father's name. For a second, I thought I had misheard him. The church seemed to disappear around me. The air felt thinner. My pulse echoed inside my ears. Slowly, I turned toward my father. He was already looking at Lucas. Not with confusion. Not with surprise. Recognition. My breath caught. You know him? I whispered. My father's eyes filled with emotion. For several seconds he could not speak. Then he nodded. A long time ago. Nothing made sense anymore. I looked from my father to Lucas and back again. The two men seemed connected by a history I had never known existed. Lucas took a slow breath. 20 years ago, before I built my company, before anyone knew my name, your father helped my family. My father lowered his head slightly. It was nothing. Lucas immediately shook his head. It was everything. The sincerity in his voice silenced the room. He glanced toward me again. My mother was struggling. We were one missed paycheck away from losing our apartment. Most people looked away. Your father did not. I stared at my father in disbelief. He had never mentioned any of this. Not once. Lucas continued. He gave us a chance when nobody else would. My father's eyes became glassy. You were just a kid. Lucas smiled faintly. I remember anyway. The moment felt surreal. All morning, I had believed Lucas Moretti was a stranger who interrupted my wedding. Now I was learning he had been connected to my family long before Ethan entered my life. Long before I knew his name. Years later, Lucas said quietly, I promised myself that if I ever had the ability to help the people who helped us, I would. My mind raced through every conversation I had ever had with my father. Every lesson about honesty, loyalty, kindness. Suddenly, they seemed connected to the man standing in front of me. That is why I came today, Lucas said. Not because of business. Not because of reputation. Because your father once protected my family when he had no reason to. And when I realized you were walking into something built on deception, I could not stay silent. Tears finally slipped down my cheeks. Not from heartbreak this time. From understanding. The entire day had felt like destruction. Yet standing there, I realized something else had happened. The truth had found me before it was too late. My father stepped forward and placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. You do not owe anyone your future, Emily. His voice trembled slightly. Not for expectations. Not for appearances. Not for promises made to the wrong person. I nodded slowly. Across the church, Ethan quietly gathered his jacket. For the first time all day, I felt no anger toward him. Only sadness. The life I imagined was gone. But maybe it had never truly existed. Then I looked back at Lucas. The man I thought I understood less than anyone in the room now seemed more honest than the person I had planned to marry. Outside, the afternoon sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, filling the church with color. For the first time since the doors opened, I felt something unexpected. Hope. Then Lucas said something that made my heart stop once more. There is one more thing your father never told you about the day our families first met. The church had grown quiet again. Most of the guests were gone now. Sunlight stretched across the empty pews, turning the stained glass colors into rivers of red and gold across the floor. I looked at Lucas, waiting. My father stood beside me with a strange expression I had never seen before. Part nostalgia. Part regret. Part gratitude. Lucas smiled faintly. The day your father helped my family, he brought someone with him. Confusion crossed my face. My father laughed softly through the emotion in his eyes. You. I blinked. Me? Lucas nodded. You were 5 years old. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then my father reached into his wallet and carefully removed an old photograph. The edges were worn from time. He handed it to me. My breath caught the second I saw it. There I was. A little girl sitting on a park bench holding a melting ice cream cone. Beside me sat a teenage boy with dark hair and serious eyes. Lucas. The photograph felt unreal in my hands. I do not remember this, I whispered. I do, Lucas said. His voice carried a warmth I had never heard before. You gave me half your ice cream because you thought I looked sad. A surprised laugh escaped me. Through everything that had happened that day, it was the first genuine laugh I had managed. My father smiled. You came home talking about the quiet boy at the park for a week. I stared at the photograph. Somehow the entire day suddenly felt different. Less random. Less accidental. As if invisible threads had been connecting moments either of us understood for years. Lucas looked toward the stained glass windows. Life moved on. Our families lost contact. But I never forgot your father's kindness. He paused. Or yours. Emotion tightened my throat. The church no longer felt like the place where my wedding ended. It felt like the place where the truth finally arrived. Weeks passed. Then months. The headlines faded. The gossip disappeared. Ethan became part of a chapter one left behind. My family healed. Slowly. Quietly. Life found its rhythm again. During that time, Lucas never pushed his way into my future. He never demanded gratitude. Never asked for anything. Sometimes we had coffee. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we sat in comfortable silence overlooking Boston Harbor while ships moved across the water below. For the first time in my life, I learned what trust actually felt like. It was not promises. It was consistency. It was not grand speeches. It was showing up. 1 year later, I stood beside the ocean on a cool summer evening along the New England coastline. The waves rolled gently toward shore. The sky glowed with soft shades of orange and blue. Lucas stood beside me, hands in his pockets, smiling the same calm smile that had once appeared at the entrance of a church. "Funny," I said. "The worst day of my life ended up leading to the best one." Lucas looked out across the water. "Sometimes the truth feels like loss before it feels like freedom." I slipped my hand into his. Not because I owed him anything. Not because he saved me. But because I chose him. The wind carried the scent of salt and summer across the shoreline. Behind us stood the people who mattered most. Family. Friends. A future built on honesty. Ahead of us stretched the horizon. Wide open. Endless. And as the sun disappeared beyond the ocean, I realized something beautiful. The right person did not change my destiny with power. He changed it with a question that finally helped me see the truth.